Today, we're going to be looking at identifying and eliminating major manufacturing losses to increase production. So why don't we go ahead and make a quick introduction. So my name is Ben Graham. I'm an account executive at Godlin on the Prophecy team. I've been here since August 2021. My background is a mechanical engineer in the industrial automation and motion control space, and I'm responsible for commercial and sales topics as they relate to the Prophecy products. I'm also joined by my colleague, Ron Klontz, who can go ahead and introduce himself now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ron Klontz, executive with Godlin and the Prophecy team. Been working with the IoT solution around 4 years, Sightline close to 30 years. So today's presentation will kind of focus in on these 6 big losses, and we'll also talk about how that would impact customers that are running various versions of Sightline.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ron. So before we dive into the agenda, we do just want to start with a poll just to understand our attendees' kind of goals and top concerns for the webinar today. So I believe the poll has just been launched. So you should see that at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or it might even pop up. And you'll see there is a multiple choice question, and we ask that you please select all that concern you. So these options are finding employees, employee engagement, automation processes, simplifying reporting, integrating HMIs into your factory, and deploying andon boards to engage team performance. So once again, we ask that you do complete the poll, and then we can use this throughout the webinar today to speak to the top concerns of the attendees. And in doing so, our agenda today is 6 different steps, where we're going to start with an overview of Prophecy and how it fits into the 6 big losses of manufacturing. Then we're going to look at a more detailed overview of a smart factory at a technical level. And this will include various automation paths, including machine monitoring and factory automation, and the different steps we can take to get there. And then we're going to jump right into a demo. So we have a prepared demo where we can look at the Prophecy tool in real time and how it interacts with CSI. After that, we're going to discuss various toolkits and once again, that automation journey and the next steps from there. Great. So to begin, we'd like to start with an overview of the 6 big losses. So with the 6 big losses in manufacturing, they fall into 3 buckets. And what these buckets are availability losses, speed losses, and quality losses. And the reason we're starting with this, because this is the framework where Prophecy is implemented to create manufacturing value on the shop floor. So if we think about these 6 big losses, we start with calendar time. So let's imagine you have a production asset on the floor, whether it's a CNC mill, or maybe it's a work cell. And what we're going to do is analyze how these 6 big losses affect production time. So once again, imagine you have that asset on the floor. Your theoretical maximum time that you can use that asset is the calendar time, right? So this is from January 1st to December 31st. And this is the theoretical amount of time we can use to run that machine. But as we all know, we're not running at 100% of that time. So this is when we need to account for our planned stops. So when we do eliminate our planned stops, then we're left with our planned production time. And from there, once again, we're just analyzing the stops in the manufacturing space that can affect our production asset. So from the planned production time, we have to think about availability losses. So this can be broken down further into things like equipment failure, setup time, maybe the operator went to the bathroom, in general, where we have availability losses from that original planned production time. And as we continue down, our next big loss is going to be a speed loss. Once again, this can be broken down into a more specific 6 big loss, if you will, which includes idle and short stops and reduced speed. And finally, after speed losses, we have to account for quality losses. So things such as defects in the process, reduced yield, or scrap. And after we've accounted for these 3 big losses buckets, or to break it down, the 6 big losses, that's when we're left with the production time. in the bottom left of this diagram. So production time is the ultimate time, if you will, of when that asset is running. And that's when you're making money, right? That's where we are maximizing at the most efficient possible operating. So this, once again, is the framework for where Prophecy operates in the manufacturing process. So if we look at these 6 big losses, there are theoretical solutions to these. And then with these theoretical solutions, such as minimizing machine downtime, minimizing these setup times, et cetera, this is exactly where the Prophecy tool comes into play. So as we'll see in a little bit, we have various tools and capabilities that specifically address these items that Ron's going to go into greater detail on and speak to in a second. Okay, great. So now I'd like to hand it over to Ron to address how Prophecy interacts with these 6 big losses. Go ahead, Ron.
Thank you, Ben. Good afternoon, everyone. So as we start this journey and looking at the smart factory, obviously there's several things that have to take place. One thing is a lot of companies have attempted to connect to the machines. You've probably found out that this is not easy. Well, that's the first little hurdle that we'll get over, is providing a foundation within the application to talk to all the languages of these various machines and the machine platforms. So if we're going to streamline the process and if we're going to automate and to get all these benefits, if you will, well, obviously this is the part we have to solve first. So here we talk about these languages, the various machine platforms, CNCs, the robots, the welders, the extruders. So every plant floor can be kind of diverse. And we know the machines are not all equal. Some are newer, some are older. So the good news is we have techniques and capabilities to be able to establish this secure connection. And then once we establish this connection, then we can really start the process of maybe transforming this data to value. So what we mean by that, let's take a simple example. Most everybody on this call has probably got a CNC machine of some type on their floor. The good news is these machine types, like CNCs, can produce a lot of data. The bad news is a lot of that was never built for our intent. It was there from the machine builder. So the good news is we're going to harness the parts of that data that do have value. There are things in there when we start to compartmentalize this and kind of silo it so we can take advantage of that data. There's things in there for performance, for maintenance, efficiency, quality, right? But in its native state, it only has a certain amount of value. You could probably drive some uptime and some machine things and metrics off of it, but it all depends on your journey and what you're looking to do. But this is where the platform, Prophecy, and with the Smart Factory, we really start to transform this data so that not only do we take advantage of that rich machine data, we start to put it in the context of, well, what's the machine manufacturing, right? What's the requirements for that manufacturing process from a standpoint of the yield that I may want, scrap that I expect, and maybe quality that has to happen, or maybe operating variables. You know, very common with an injection mold machine that I might have a temperature range that I must operate within, right? Any and all this could be part of the environment. So the Smart Factory, powered by Prophecy, is what's going to enable these connections to be securely connected, all these machine platforms, the data to be connected and harnessed. And then through the Smart Factory, we start to transform that data, really something we can take action on. So if we look at the Smart Factory from a high level, really talking about 3 primary areas. Obviously the machine, the connections, whether that's wired or wireless, right? We have a number of options to do that. Being able to connect to the newer devices, the older devices, and then being able to set up things like alarms and alerts on that. Then out on the factory, how we start to reimagine that operator engagement and what we can do with automation. That's what a lot of companies are looking for today, is how we really drive automation. So within this, obviously then how this data is going to get consumed, how this gets visualized throughout the factory and maybe in the front office. There's got to be thoughts given to how that would take place and how that can impact the journey for Smart Factory. So as we start this, we see companies really approaching this from what I would call 2 paths or 2 strategic points of view. So as you start to put out a game plan and start to map out your strategy, you could really do this from two angles. And these can be both quick time to value. The first one, look at it from just machine monitoring. A lot of packages in the market can do this. Well, we certainly can also. You may start with something that simple. This does not require a connection to your Sightline environment in order to be successful with this first phase or this first path. You can get your machines connected up. We can start monitoring those machines, and we can add alarms and alerts so that we know when maybe a machine has either run into a problem and thrown a fault condition, or two, we can maybe determine if maybe a certain variable like temperature, speed, or pump pressure is going up or down at a certain rate that we should do something, right? The second path, which is really now bringing in the smart factory, automation, kind of reimagined worker engagement, team performance, maybe you want OEE and those kind of things. Well, that's where the factory automation piece steps in. It builds on what we've already done with the machine monitoring, but now we kind of can take that to the next level. Okay, so let's focus in on these two approaches in a little more detail so you understand them. The first one, just basic machine monitoring. In this example, we set up the machines, the secure connections, and guess what? We start to drive all the great alerts and the monitoring of these machines depending on the type of machine it is. So with this, maybe we set up a low and a high alarm on voltage. Most every CNC has got motors that are driving the machinery. Well, guess what? That's a typical failure point. It could be pumps. Any and all that could be driven by pressure, right? These are all things we can monitor, which ultimately gets to the core of one of the top big six losses, which is availability, right? If the machine is down, it is not available. Companies need to stop and prevent this whole thing around unplanned downtime. Traditionally, what's the number one thing you use in ERP systems to prevent unplanned downtime? Not to say there's more. It's usually a robust preventative maintenance program, right? It's usually driven by some numbers or history or knowledge. Well, here we're going to start to drive that from data. The cycles that the machines are running, the time that they've been running, the number of hits, etc. Any and all that can be rich data that could drive the preventive maintenance team to know when to perform maintenance so that we stay out ahead of unplanned downtime. Rates of change and indicators, there are standard things within Prophecy to do that. So that if the temperature starts to move up exponentially or the pressure goes down exponentially, we can get engaged and send on an alert, a text, or an email to maybe get ahead of the unplanned downtime. So this is a key part of any factory automation or smart factory, is placing this machine monitoring component in so that we can stay ahead of that part of the unplanned downtime and thus driving one of the big six losses. The visualizations can also occur within that environment. So your maintenance team may have a mobile device that would have the alarm panel on it. They might have the display on a tablet that would show the status of all the machines and maybe cycles or the run times, right? Any and all that can be part of this first journey. This goes in very fast and very quick. This can have a very quick time to value and just a quick win for starting your journey. So now, for companies that are looking to further the journey, this is where the factory automation comes in. So in the poll, I started to look at some of the numbers. Automation is right there at the top, which is kind of what I expected. So in this automation journey, this is where we're reimagining how the teams would be engaged across the shop floor, and especially the worker and the worker engagement. So this is where we introduce a concept within Prophecy and Smart Factory called human-machine interface. You've probably heard these terms, especially the manufacturing circles. They've been around for a lot of years. Now in the Sightline world, we're used to traditional labor tracking screens. Like in years ago, we used to have Shop Track, great product. Did a really great job at collecting labor and dispatch list and those kind of things. And now the evolution to Enforce Factory Track and recent MES, there again, those systems are very good at what they do. And the good news is a smart factory plays right along with that. These HMIs, however, are a little different type of worker engagement. This is where we have a simple operator interface that may combine live machine data, also with key Sightline data, and things that we want to have happen to the operator through the process of making product, not necessarily with the operator having to drive all those activities. The HMI, with its built-in workflow and process that you design through the Prophecy Designer, you really get to control what the operator experience is going to be. So the operator can be prompted for things. For example, the machine goes idle for 5 minutes. Well, instead of the operator going and tell us that happened, we could pop up a box and say, hey, you've been idle for 5 minutes. Pick one of these reason codes. That can drive micro downtime analysis. That's a goal for a lot of companies, but it's not easy to get there. With our application in Smart Factory, there is a path to get there. So these can include all this data within one interface. It's all web-based, so it can be very dynamic and easy to use on the floor. And then thus we can start to change how operators would engage. Obviously, not only the operator engagement is important, but we want the automation. The automation can occur based on these simple operator interactions. Well, guess what? Behind the scenes, we can then record this data in Sightline automatically. So transactional support, things like setup and run times, being able to interact maybe with quality and a quality plan in Sightline. Sightline has, QCS and all the capabilities there for in-process inspection, for example. Even driving things like ancillary label printing for, we quarantine something to scrap, right? Any and all this could be possible depending on the type of machine platform and what you're looking to automate. That's kind of really the heart and soul of how we can change dynamically the fabric of the shop floor and the way the workers engage, and then the automation that we can drive from that engagement. So as we're looking at the worker engagement, we're also looking at the team engagement. So maybe that CNC is part of a CNC group or a work cell. Well, wouldn't it be nice to have a live and on board that shows how is my CNC group performing, for example? Now, it could be extruders, it could be a robot, it could be a production line, folks that have paint booths, or various types of heat treat, for example, right? Any and all of those can be monitored and have team performance to where we know and we keep score. Everybody grew up keeping score when you're young. I played a lot of sports. I'm not sure I'd know what to do if I didn't keep score. I play a lot of golf today. Unfortunately, score is a really important part of that. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. But these andons are really designed. You can run them on a TV, like with a little Raspberry Pi. This little URL out of our application runs on the TV over that work cell, and now they know how they're performing. What's our quantities produced? What was our goal for the day? What's our efficiency? What's our scrap? So instead of updating that whiteboard or the Excel spreadsheet, these can be done dynamically and real time throughout the factory floor, on live displays or on tablets. Completely your choice. Obviously,
hey,
how
Ron,
we blend this.
So sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to address, there was a question in the Q&A, just in the attempt to answer it kind of in context. So James Alexander asked, so the HMI would replace ShopTrack completely, question mark?
So kind of the traditional HMI about how data gets collected when it's connected to the machine, yeah, that would kind of replace what ShopTrack is doing. We're looking to kind of re-envision that experience because companies are having difficulty getting operators, training operators, and especially asking operators to do more. And we need speed, we need automation, and we're really looking for accuracy. ShopTrack's a great application. Worked with it for a lot of years. A lot of our customers use it very successfully, but we're kind of looking out for the next 3 to 5 years. And the industry, and as fast as things are moving, companies are constantly asking, how can we have a new and automated user experience that's a lot more simple and a lot easier to use. And so in the traditional sense of having them necessarily, go clock in and clock out of a job on a CNC machine, you'll see in a second how we can kind of reimagine that experience. Excellent question. Thank you. So good question, kind of timely comes up. Obviously, we feel that there's a lot of great things within maybe what ShopTrack does or maybe what FactoryTrack does. That's okay. There's things within those applications that are going to be needed within the MES environment of a factory, right? Visibility of drawings and dispatches and all those wonderful things. So we created, for those companies on the call today that do have Factory Track, for example, well, we created an environment where you can plug in for Prophecy into Factory Track for the smart factory. So this would allow those types of capabilities based on the operator and machine platform, and then obviously driving all the transactions that we do within Sightline, dealing with maintenance and the incident. And a little example today, I'll show everyone kind of a couple of these things just to kind of highlight the point. The good news is regardless of your environment and where you're at with your Sightline journey, we've kind of built this so that it can go in, connect to the machines, and then connect to your Sightline environment so you can get quick time to value. So with that, let's set up what we're going to see from a demo perspective. So I'll have a little example here. So I am running, obviously, Sightline version 10 of the multi-tenant cloud. Not that that's important, but that's the environment I'm in today. So in there, I have a job that in which I need to make this gear. This gear has a certain spec. It has the need for setup time, run time. I've got a quality plan in Sightline that's called for that we'll see how that interacts. I've got to deal with scrap, and unfortunately things happen and sometimes things break. So within this little example, I'm going to deal with kind of all of that. So let's jump over. And Ben, if you would just confirm that you do see my Sightline environment.
Yes, we do.
Awesome, thank you. So as you can see here, I'm in my Sightline environment. We're going to do my example, but just know that within this environment, here we can connect in all the various components of Smart Factory. If you're using something like version 10, or you want to render this from web devices, you certainly can do that. Like I said, you can deploy this via Smart Factory in the Factory Track. So I've got a an operator that's going to make this part. Obviously, this part from a dispatch list could be presented to me, or I could be doing a job selection in Sightline. I've got my gear, my 12 tooth. It shows me my tool ID. But notice in a non-traditional fashion, I start to see now other things in my environment that may be important to how I am going to manufacture a quality product. Here I can see spindle load. I can see if there's any overrides that are happening in my environment. So it keeps the operator from having to go to multiple screens to make sure he's in control of the production process. This is the beauty of the HMI. We can combine all this key Sightline data with machine data. Even down here, I'm also wanting to monitor pump pressure. And just did that as an example to kind of show how this can be a very dynamic environment. And because we are reading the job in Sightline, then we will prompt and kind of highlight the buttons in which the operator could execute. Simple push clicks, we want to make this simple. So normally what does the operator do? He gets the job as dispatch, maybe paperwork with the drawing. He's going to go into a period of setup, right? So he's going to do setup. He's going to end that setup, right? We don't want to log, everybody gets that. But you know, as he's doing this, we're also automating as we talk in the background. So normally he's now going to finish setup. He's going to put the machine in process, and we're going to start to make product. One second, we're going to pause here. I want to make sure that I have my machine diagram correct. Let's go ahead and view this live. That little guy had timed out. He sat there a little too long. So let me jump out here real quick. Take 1 second. I want to get my Smart Factory panel here, and we'll launch that little guy out. So this is where we design within Prophecy. Not that everybody needs to know that, but the designer will cover just a little bit later. Oh, there we go. All right, so now we're back. So we're starting to make product. And the thing to think about as the operator engages his HMI and we see pump pressure, over here, as we start to look out in our environment, I can see my andon board for all my grinders and CNCs. I can see that my operator is now running again. I can also see out on maybe a factory view for all my factory views, kind of like take the roof off and look down, you see all the machines. I can see I'm up to 5 parts on my MC300. That's the machine I'm running on. And I also see out in my maintenance panel that I'm running and I don't have any alarms going on for my grinder. So far everything looks good. Now notice we have paused here. Why is that? It's because we read the quality plan in Sightline, and it said after every 5th part, I must take a caliper measurement. So here, instead of the operator doing that on the side and writing it down and all that, what he does is he can hook up a caliper or electronic Bluetooth caliper. He scans in a measurement and he updates the quality plan in Sightline. We can record those test results in the background, thus speeding up and simplifying the whole operator engagement. So now we're up to part number 7, number 8. I can see my pump pressure. I can see my spindle load and how that's working, right? If that's important. This is just examples of kind of what's possible. But notice here, we've now paused after part 10. So every 5th part, we're going to do a measurement. Notice out on my andon here, we're showing also 10 parts that I've run, right? So everything is connected throughout the factory based on the production that's being performed in real time. That's kind of the key. So obviously we're going to engage. In the real world, things start to go awry pretty quick. So here we're going to scan in 23. Now, unbeknownst to the operator, this one happens to be outside of tolerance. There again, we've kind of built this HMI so that it shows some capability of what's kind of possible. So here in this example, the operator needs to select a reason code. This could be a button. It could be a little drop-down list, right? So what that is can be really simple. If you just wanted to pop up a button and they could press that. Here, I've got a little drop-down list. And let's say that I'm thinking something's maybe going on here, a little noise or something. I'm thinking maybe a machine issue, right? So I can pick that. I could update, but also notice this is kind of secondary. We could have that part that got scrapped that could be quarantined off. Not only do we get a nice reason code and document that within Sightline, but maybe we need a label or a barcoded label that gets printed and put with the scrap part so that, you know, we could do any kind of further testing or isolation, if you will, quarantining of that part. So you can do any of those kind of things. So where that's reading a caliper or scale as part of this process, printing labels with and without barcodes as part of the process. There again, we are looking to simplify operators going to multiple and doing multiple tasks and systems. Let's put it all within the HMI control so it can be automated and streamlined. So here, the operator would just basically update the job, print the QA tag, and we're moving on. So as we see, we're up to 11 parts now. If we go out to our andon board, we can see I've made 12. I have scrapped 1 piece. And so everything is kind of working. I can see that I've now made 13 and I've scrapped 1 here on my big, baby TV that's in the boss's area, right? Now notice, maybe the operator sees something going on and he did a spindle speed reduction. Notice how that spindle speed reduction is shown throughout the factory, the floor. So maybe he's trying to do some things to stop the scrap that's happening. So the operator is kind of engaging. He's trying to figure things out. Sometimes that works, but the good news is we know that. In our case here, we'll notice that, well, it didn't work. It looks like I had a pump issue with, it being disabled, maybe high PSI, like it said. So now we've got a downtime situation. What can we do? Well, the operator can engage maintenance, but notice over on the maintenance panel, I have a critical alarm that's fired. So this be on the mobile device. This could be text or emailed that the coolant pump has gone out. So the tech can create an incident, something for service and preventative maintenance inside a Sightline, the maintenance package, or the operator could simply do the maintenance and go offline. Now, when he does that, if we want to see how this engages Sightline, so I'm just going to click over. I am now over in Sightline as a result of the operator hitting that button. All I'm going to do is bring back my incidents today, which could be my precursor to service. And notice here, we created at 118, which is today, for this machine, that CNC we're on, the MC300, we created a maintenance service request because of the coolant pump going high, the high PSI. We could also put in fault tolerances, fault codes, anything that would help the tech when he gets to the machine. But the whole point to take is that we can automate this whole ecosystem to where we can really deal, hopefully, preventative wise, that we don't get into this scenario. But if we do, we can coordinate the activities of multiple departments so that they can engage and deal with the maintenance. So not only do we this, we go over on the resources. So sometimes maintenance will impact APS in your planning and scheduling in Sightline. So here we'll notice that we just need to really refresh this guy. We're going to see a 118 pop in that we created a scheduled maintenance for this as a result. And then obviously, as we all know, then we can create a shipped exception for that for the emergency repair. So this now would be picked up by APS and Sightline, and then thus could impact the schedule, and then potentially how jobs are going to finish and how production would impact orders and the like. So that's how this ecosystem can be connected from, say, a maintenance perspective. Obviously, the other parts of this is that we're continuing now to make some product. This is good. We're back in business because it's all about the machine uptime and making money. We're going to finish this off. We've got a couple other things. Notice that here in this scenario, all the dashboards and andons are updating. We can see that this is driving. I'm up to 21, 22 parts. I've got some scrap that we've dealt with. I'm bound now back into the green. So you can see I've got some things still in red that we got to deal with. It's red, green, yellow, right? That's a very simple andon visualization technique. So as we finish out, hopefully we're going to get some good parts here, because that's what this is all about. We're going to finish our job up, and then the operator is going to be prompted for one button to finish. And we're going to also see now the automation kick in, so that we simplify the operator engagement for production reporting. So obviously, there's a lot that's happened there for scrap, for quantities complete. But guess what? The operator has not had to write any of that down, because now if I go over to my unposted job tran within Sightline and I filter on today, what we're going to see is that just by clicking the buttons, I got some basic setup time, not much because we weren't there very long. And then notice here, my first scrap transaction with my reason code and quantity. And then when I finished off my job, notice I had 28 complete, 27 moved, and my lapsed machine operator time is contained here. This now would get posted. It follows all the protocols within Sightline to adhere to costing and all the other methods. Our team made sure of that when we were looking at how the Smart Factory and Prophecy would talk to the various versions of Sightline. Remember, we've been doing this for a lot of years, and Sightline was obviously the first place that we wanted to look at, because it's heart and soul of what all of us were doing. I know for my career, it's kind of what I've been doing. So that's kind of the big picture of how this all ties together. And then from there, obviously the visualizations that would occur throughout the factory, throughout the enterprise. We're getting the automation of transactions. We're reducing and simplifying the operator engagement. And that's really what it's all about. So these URLs and dashboards that are produced in Prophecy with the designer, I'll talk about in a second, but this is where you can build into your environment everything from OEE to scrap counts and reason codes, looking at pressures and temperatures across machines. This is where you really have a lot of opportunity to kind of design how you want to look at data, analyze data from a real-time perspective that's being generated from the Smart Factory. So this is where obviously we're a little different than some of the other applications, right? They're really good, at doing shop floor and shop floor execution. I'm not saying that at all. What we're saying is we kind of now take this to that next level. I have an integrated alarm panel here. So this shows anything that's firing off that's, red, yellow, green, right? So red's never good. But in this environment, we can see all of that. And obviously within Smart Factory, the ability to do the dashboards, visualize the dashboards, and really kind of work with them in the way that you want to. This is where all the dashboards are contained within the Smart Factory and Prophecy. You can go into design mode, you can design your own, or like we saw a moment ago, I want to view this live and maybe view this on a TV. You could have this type of display running in the factory for visualization on maybe rejected parts by shift and by reason code, showing all the rejections and the data that's being done, right? So the combination of data very rich and very visual within the application. So to kind of finish this up, obviously every company that's on here today may have a different way that they want their operators to engage, the way that they want their factory floor to visualize, and the places and parts of Sightline that they would like to have automation occur, right? That's the good news. Prophecy and the Smart Factory is kind of designed with that end in mind. A lot of the applications we saw in the market around 4 years ago when I was on the team that helped kind of launch this, is what I didn't see was a lot of applications that were like Sightline that provided a mongoose-like tool set. Did not see that. So we felt like it was very important that companies can really, kind of obviously get trained and implemented and learn, but then when they would be in control of their own destiny and what they wanted to do. So we provide a dynamic toolkit within Prophecy in the Smart Factory to allow you to graphically design your own HMIs, your end-on boards, and your dashboards. So it's graphical drag and drop, very visual. This is where you combine out the machine data and the Sightline data. We build in the Mongoose REST API controls so that you can talk to really all the aspects of Sightline, whether that's on-premise, if you're maybe version 8 and before, you're looking to do something, you certainly can do that. Or being able to reason we did this, we obviously do this within the multi-tenant cloud. So we have the abilities within Prophecy to work with a lot of versions of Sightline. A lot of companies are maybe looking to move to cloud. Obviously, we had a lot of things that drop in and plug and play with that environment, so you get a quick time to value. So this is where companies really get to design their own, because there again, you may have automated machines that are pumping out parts like an extruder. Very limited operator engagement. Obviously, that HMI would be much more simplified than someone that's maybe in an environment to where they're doing med device or aerospace and defense, and they have huge traceability issues that the HMI would provide a ton of automation around, but obviously you would have more detail, right? But that's the kind of thing you can really design based on the machine platform or the operator need to make things simple and to automate. And then obviously utilizing that designer, everything you do within Prophecy has the ability to have unique web addresses or URLs as we call them. So thus, if you want to embed that natively within the Mingle dashboard or to have a Smart Factory dashboard like I showed, that's all simple and easy to do. We want to make that really easy to where you just kind of drop it in, be able to highlight maybe a web part or something that you want to put on your dashboard to make it seamless. You don't have to go multiple places. You can dynamically embed that within the application to make it really simple and really easy. The other part is that we realize that, the ecosystem that Sightline customers have, sometimes it involves other systems. Understand that. So there's not only the ability to do some connections, but we can also automate the data to some of those other applications. So we have automation rules that allows for us to collect data, to be able to do webhooks, HTTP pushes, right? Those kind of things. Don't want to get too technical, but there again, if you do have other systems within your, kind of environment that you're working with Sightline in, there may be the need to do some of those things. Sometimes you might want to accumulate data from a machine, and then through that summarization, we could automate and do something within Sightline. So those are all possible. Some things would be good with operator interaction. Sometimes maybe we need automation to where we're just collecting, the machine data, and then we're going to accumulate and then automate that in maybe a downstream event. So a lot of opportunities there to kind of look at each factory, each environment, and then take those kind of uniquely so that you really have a chance to dial in and fit your environment and automate. All right, so let's talk about the journey a little bit. As I talked about earlier, your factory floor is going to have a combination of new machines and old machines. The new machines may have something like a PLC in it. Allen Bradley, Rockwell, those all are very prominent PLC platforms. A lot of times we also see these machine builders they have sometimes closed off platforms, and they may have software that's sitting there that's actually reading the machines. Good news is most all those have REST APIs that we can then talk to that level as well. So the point here is takeaway is that whether it's a PLC that we might want to connect to, a software platform, or let's take some of the older, I've seen punch presses and brake presses that don't really have anything, not really digital at all. Couldn't put a, an Ethernet connection on if we tried, right? Well, that's where the evolution of these little edge devices start to really pay some dividends. These are very inexpensive. They can be wired or wireless, and sometimes they wouldn't even sit on the machine. They could just sit in proximity. For example, we've done projects to where we have a video that sits within proximity that reads the status of the stack light. Well, you can drive a lot of information off the stack light. Machine's off, on, machine's paused. Is there a fault? You can start to drive some efficiency and other things just from monitoring stack lights. So things that simple. Obviously, things like voltage. There's a number of sensors that can be placed in proximity of breakers and et cetera to pick up, is the machine off or on, voltage high, low, et cetera. So these edge devices have really opened up a world for manufacturers now to kind of look at some of this older equipment. Obviously, you won't get everything that a PLC gives you, but you probably can pick up the important parts to where we can look to drive automation. Even within that, we can also have an HMI experience to where then the operator can give us certain key pieces of things so we know what the brake press or the punch press is doing at a given time so that we can drive that rich data and the automation that we talked about earlier. So the good news is there's a lot of opportunity here, regardless of the age of the machines and the type of machines you have on your floor, that we can work with you and we can find a solution to probably the challenge that you have. Okay, so that brings us up kind of how to engage. I'll let Ben jump in here, see if we've got any Q&A that we want to do, and kind of wrap up.
Sounds good. Well, thanks a lot, Ron. That was a great overview of Prophecy and the various features for the 6 big losses. So before we move on to Q&A, and we do have some questions accumulating here, which we will address in a second, I did just want to take some time to mention how to possibly engage. So really with Prophecy, how we tend to roll the product out is through something like a quick start pilot or just an initial wave pilot. And what this is an option to look at a set number of machines to roll out Prophecy and address some of these different tool sets for the given application. So when we do this, it is a 3-year subscription where the cost of the software is based on the number of machines or smart connectors, and then the services or the setup fee. So if you do have questions about this quick start pilot or how to engage, you can see our contact information there. Please feel free to send myself or Ron an email, and we would love to chat about your application in greater detail.
Excellent, Ben. I see in chat, we got a question. Was related to the HMI and the engagement of the quality. The question was, can you apply upper and lower control limits in the quality plan? Well, obviously in Sightline, you can have an upper and lower control limit. If you were running an older version and didn't have quality, we could place those controls within the HMI, or we can read those limits from Sightline, really either one. And the other part was, can the system calculate per statistical methods? Obviously, Smart Factory is not designed for, full-on SPC, et cetera. Now, could you make a call to an application that does the calculation and all that? Absolutely. So the thing to take away from the question is you can have upper and lower limits within the HMI. You can have those being furnished from Sightline, or if we needed to make a call to another application for a calculation or limits, we could certainly do any and all of those. Hope that answers the question.
Okay, great. And Ron, there was one more question from Albert. Does this support Sightline's Work Center batch?
Yeah, so we have customers that are using more production schedule, JIT and Kanban. So we've done one or two other projects. One was a plastic injection company that they used production schedules and high volume repetitive. So yeah, depending on the type of production you use, whether that's job orders, production schedules, or maybe we have, a machine that's just pumping up parts, that's going to, a sub-assembly that's going to feed a higher level assembly. And all you want to do is take that part quantity count, funnel that into Sightline as a JIT and Kanban transaction. We can support any and all of those. Really anything that, you can do in Sightline via a transaction method, we can automate that through a REST API call or being able to hit the IDO in Sightline. Our team's very proficient at all of that. We can help you automate those transactions.
Okay, great. And then one more question just came in from Keith. And Keith asks, will you be showing your product at the Sun Conference?
Yes, sir. I think the plan is we will be there. So I think we're planning something unique for demonstration purposes there. So hang on to your hat. I don't even know what it is yet, so I'll find out soon.
Yep, and I'll add to that. I do know what it is. It's going to be very exciting, but I'm not going to say now. So please stop by the booth to find out. Okay, well, there looks to be no further questions. So with that being said, that concludes the webinar today. Ron and I and the entire Prophecy team would like to thank everyone for taking the time to attend the webinar. And please, if you have applications that you're interested in using Prophecy for, feel free to engage with us by emailing myself at ben.graham@godlin.com or ron.klontz@godlin.com. And we'd love to begin working together. So that being said, thank you everyone and have a great day.